this is actually one of my favorite maps to use when I work with a group that hasn't been introduced to art of hosting. It's very curious, and we usually end up there because they're curious about participatory processes, and usually they feel like the facilitation, using that word, and that they're stuck and they want to try something new. And this is just a really great map for introducing some of the foundational theory. And I think when we use this, you might see in the book other places this diamond, you might see it. It's something that's a pattern that we really see in the structures of the work that we do. So this is a simple, it also comes from a social justice lineage. The guy who crafted this, there's a book called Participatory Decision Making that's over there. It's a really beautifully designed curriculum. I love the book. Every page is just a teaching you can see on one page. So it's really visually beautiful and clear. And it comes from, he was working in social justice and civil rights, and so it comes from that lineage of doing the work. And so in its simplest sense, the idea is that, and you've heard this, folks who were here yesterday heard this, folks who were here yesterday experienced it, that in participatory processes, we want to bring every voice into the room, right? And one of the ways we talk about that is diverge, right? And so if we're bringing folks in, we're opening up the dialogue. We want to get a lot of voices into the room. We want to hear a lot of different opinions. We want an opportunity to stay open. Folks who are on the World Cafe team, thank you for the hour and a half at lunch to do that, right? It took us, we were really trying to structure it in a way so that we could bring in every place that folks wanted to go, but keep the conversation open. It was the first day. We didn't want to come to solutions. We wanted to, as Chris just framed out this morning, we wanted me in the questions. We wanted to open. So why is that important? Lots of reasons. So just to give an example right here. At times, so one of the stories, there was one story that was told yesterday I just want to touch on, and that was, it was something that happened yesterday. Yesterday, when we were deciding to go outside, Chris had a really simple question to give the group. She very simply framed a question. We can go outside, but is there a need? Does anyone have a need here that means we should stay in the room? Because really, we could stay in the room or we could go outside. There wasn't a real high stakes in that decision. It was just make things nicer, right? So she framed it very simply. Is there a need? Does anyone need to stay in the room? And the group, we didn't need to pass the piece and go around in a circle and have everybody say their feelings about whether to go outside. We just checked in with that one question. Agreement was made. Yeah, enthusiasm, no special need, we went outside. So that's an example where we don't necessarily need every decision in the room, right? We can just ask a simple question, make a decision. It was a group decision. Low stakes, low complexity. Sometimes there's decisions that can be made, that expedient decisions that need to be made that might be a little more complex. So staying here, having a few people involved in a decision, you get expedience. And that's very useful. So one example might be, say, a CEO or a executive director of an organization. It could be a huge organization or a small organization, walks in and finds out they're not making payroll on Friday. Now that's kind of high stakes, right? That would make a big difference to a lot of people. The activities and the decisions that get to make to do that can involve a few experts. They can call the bank, they can call the board chair. There's a little bit of complexity there to figure it out, but they don't need everybody's voice in that decision-making process. So within a few phone calls, a few people thinking together, they've got their decision how to get a bank loan or just a credit so that everybody can get paid. Nobody even finds out about it. Things are cool, right? That would look a little bit, so you've got the experts and the people that know and the people with the power to make the change. That's the point there, right? So you have an expedient decision. That affects a lot of people. Just to spin on that, it would be a little different if the executive director of a community organization walks in and finds out that an entire wing of the U.S. federal government is no longer funding what you do, and half of your organization is gone, right? A little more complexity involves a lot more stakeholders. There are many more repercussions. And folks may have seen in situations like that where the board of directors, the staff, maybe the funder get on the phone and make the decisions, right? And then you have, what happens? You have a decision that's made, and then most of the time is spent here negotiating that decision because they're the stakeholders' voice. And I love what Chris said yesterday, the story about the town hall. So one of the words that when I hear a group says we really want buy-in on something, right? That tells me that they don't have something that's clear and decided that they want to market. They don't have a product. They don't have, Chris showed the cards that he has yesterday about this little deck of cards for group process. He can just, it's been created by lots of people. He can distribute it. He can market it. It's very different than if he wanted to create a decision for a group about what kind of group processes they needed, right? So that bullet idea right here, if this, when people say, one of the, the town hall example, the folks here, the decision makers, there was that, he said that sometimes when you have a town hall, right, the folks in the front of the room want to get feedback about their decision or the thing that they're rolling out, and the microphone becomes the weapon and the people in the audience become the bullet, right? So that's the kind of situation where people want buy-in, they want feedback, where it's not something that's being marketed. It's something that there's some knowledge, there's some understanding, there's complexity, people are going to have opinions, people are highly invested in it, and you might want to think about a different process, right? You might want to step into that kind of co-creation that we're talking about. And that's when this model starts to become helpful, and it's a way to help people think about, we need to do something different here. We're not marketing something that we know is beautiful, we want to roll out, right? We've got another kind of situation. And then you may have all gotten this far many times before, and so just to bring that bullet in again, the classic brainstorming, right? Many people here have said, well, we really need some feedback, we're going to do some brainstorming. So let's bring the people together and get all their ideas, right? So just to flip on that, I think some of us may have had this experience where we have all these bullets, right? You heard bullets kill. You make a list of, you've heard that in other settings. But when there's a list of ideas that come out, and the group gets to do that, they get to put all of their ideas out, and they just get sent out into the world. And then what often happens is that the folks here that invited the community in to make all of those ideas, the bullets that land on the target are the ones that could already land in the first place, right? Because you've involved people in the brainstorming, you've generated the ideas, but you haven't created an environment for co-creation, for new things to happen, for other people to step in and be a part of the solution. So this is a place where I think a lot of us and a lot of the groups I work with end up. They know how to get here. They know how to get everybody's ideas. They know how to get the bullet points. They know how to get the list, the brainstorm. And then that's it, because there isn't a structure for holding it or another way of doing something with the work we did together that day, with all the ideas that are in the community, with all of the energy. So all these beautiful ideas just end up, going off. We could say off target, and maybe some people might find each other and go off somewhere else. That's fine, but the original question doesn't get to involve all of the potential that's there, that's in the community and that's in that process. All right? So then we're going to talk about, when Tuesday comes, we're going to really talk about, and that's what our hosting, how do you host beyond that? How do you host beyond inviting people that need to be in the conversation, getting the ideas? How do you shift from working for buy-in or feedback? How do you shift into doing something else? And that's really, right, that's a fundamental question here. And so Tuesday's going to come speak about some of how we've been thinking about how to hold this area, which is called in this model, and some of you may have heard before, the growth zone. Okay, the word growing zone. And let me give a little grown zone. So let's see. And this is something I like to do a quick way to set a group up to that invitation we had yesterday about coming into curiosity, right, to another way of thinking, that personal practice piece for the folks who weren't here. We talked about the fourfold path. It's in your book, and the first part of it is really being present and hosting yourself, paying attention to how you need to show up. So you might know a growth zone's going on when you start to hear your voices in your head in the room about, that's off topic, I'm lost, my brain hurts. If only they'd get it. One of my favorites, I wonder what's on HBO tonight. Check out. Even be collective thinking, we're stuck. I mean, you know, you're in the we, but we're stuck. Anyone else want to add one? What are some things when you know, like, we might never get where we're going?
That'll never work.
We have nothing in common. Oh, the action. You need action people in the room. You need people that are anxious right here to get to work, right? Or you're just going to have ideas flying everywhere. When will we get to the real work? Yeah. That's a stupid idea. Oh no, not again. Tried that. Any others?
That'll never work.
That'll never work.
Yeah, that's a good one.
What's your personal, you know?
Is it me?
Pardon?
Is it me?
Is it me? Ah.
Really
So-
tried that.
So this is a sign you might be getting somewhere, actually, and this is the work for the host, like how do you hold this, right? That's really what we're talking about here, all you entering beyond buy-in, beyond getting everybody's idea, but holding that space where people want to run whatever direction they're comfortable with, to HBO, getting to the real work, judging, and that's what we also talked about yesterday, that with judgment like this, there's no room for curiosity, right? So what does it take to, like meditation practices, you just notice them, they're not going to go away, but just let them be there, but not operate out of them, right? And as a host, it's really hard sometimes when somebody says, when are we going to get to the real work? You're hosting, you're going to respond to that directly, you might lose the opportunity. So this is where, what happens when you can hold that space, and we call it emergent. You also saw the chaos. For folks who were here yesterday, you saw a little bit of the chaos and order. So there's a little bit of that chaos, right, showing up here, and holding it so that you move in, you start to get the beauty of, well, I'll just put it over here because I'm going to put it up here, because one of the things that you get through this and you start to get into the converging place, what you can get is innovation, right? Which, and we'll let go of expediency here, all right? But you get innovation, you get sustainability, right? Which is something that I know is always, it's important to this group, it's always important in our social justice work, right? And inclusion, right? Which is something we all want. And so we're gonna Tuesday's gonna pick up a piece here. We're gonna talk more about how do we host the growth zone in our social justice environments. And the idea is when you get through that, you host it, you get to the place where the synthesis starts to happen and the agreement and the coming together. And I want to say something about two more things here. One is about time, okay? And we had some profound talk about time yesterday, right? It was introduced, I think maybe Dale, someone spoke in the room during the cafe, like, what is time? And there's often, we never feel like there's enough time, right? We always feel like lives are at stake. That's another voice that can come in here. This is, that's a real pressure. You're hosting and somebody says, this is about people's lives, right? And how do you take that and say, yeah, it's about people's lives. That's why we have to host this in a way that can all show up and we can make really wise decisions. We don't need expedient decisions here. We don't have the answers. We need to make really wise decisions. So I like the story that Sally told, I think, during the planning day. She talked about a custody case, family court custody case, that was going on for 3 years. And there was no resolution and no movement. And you know what that did, right, to the family and the kids. They're in limbo land. Because here's where here's where it was stuck, right? There were systems, right? So the people, I'm going to say systems, I'm going to say there's structural power, right? What happens here is where the structural power shows up. So the structural power, the folks, the lawyers, that was holding the power. And the power that the people had was to say no, no, no. But in the court case, the structural power was playing out that decision through the court system. And the power that the family and the people had was to say no. It's the kind of power that you have in the town hall where you get to shoot bullets and targets. That's all the power you have. But when the intervention that was done was to hold a circle, right? For that, so the judge, the lawyers, the family sat in circle. And it was an 8-hour day that they sat in circle. But they came to a sustainable solution. The family worked it out. So this is where I kind of think time, we have to think about time differently. That took an 8-hour day to be in circle, to hold the container, to hold everybody. They probably had to undo a lot in order to get to a place where they could come to that beautiful decision. But it was 3 years of just a power battle right here. And I don't know, that sort of makes you think about time a little bit, right?